Welcome to the Grow Your Business and Grow Your Wealth podcast with Gary Heldt. Gary is an expert in helping business owners put together a plan that will provide a better future for their businesses, themselves, and their families. On the podcast, Gary interviews other professionals who share his vision, and together they share secrets and strategies any business owner can use to build a better financial foundation for your business and your life.
Hey, welcome back to the podcast. This week, my guest is Lowell Mora, and he is the president of Impact CFO, and he brings exceptional financial leadership to small to medium-sized businesses. Welcome, Lowell.
Thanks for having me. Great to be here, Gary. Thanks.
All right. So, Lowell, give us your background.
Yeah. So I have been at the accounting and CFO world for quite some time now. I know I look like I'm about 27, but I'm not anymore.
Right.
I've been doing this for 35 years. I got an undergrad in accounting from Washington University in St. Louis, came out like all good accountants, good auditors, got my CPA and went to work for Arthur Andersen for 3 years. I'm in Chicago. So started here in Chicago. Manufacturing, the entire through line of my career is manufacturing industrial products, B2B industrial equipment, construction, that type of stuff. So started out with the big boys, was there for 3 years, worked then for, over the next 5 years, worked for a couple large manufacturing companies in the Chicago area, publicly traded, found out very quickly that that was not my cup of tea. Too much bureaucracy, not enough autonomy, not enough availability for creativity. Got my MBA at Kellogg here in Chicago, and then right around 2000 made a conscious shift to work for family-owned businesses, which is what I've done as a CFO for the last 25 years. Typically businesses, family-owned businesses, typically in the $50 to $250 million in sales range. Same industry lines that I talked about. You get to wear a lot of different hats, which is what keeps me motivated and excited. Not only finance, I've had IT, HR, customer service, operations, assembly, supply chain, logistics, everything. You really get to sit at the table and be the right-hand person to the CEO, which is really what I enjoyed. So over the last 25 years, I worked actually for 5 different companies, kept getting increasing responsibilities, different challenges. Then over the last 6 years, with the last 2 companies I worked for were both third generation family-owned businesses, and I was in a position to help them both to successful external exits. So really interesting, both third generation families, which is when a lot of times either the second or typically the third you get there, there's no heirs coming in, and they decide they want to make a move. So full marketing effort, whole ball of wax, lots of fun, lots of work, pretty profitable for CFOs. So that was great. The first one we sold to a strategic, which I was right back in the world of being with a big publicly traded. So I didn't stay there. I almost immediately got recruited to the other one that we sold in 2023. That was sold into, kind of the private equity family office world, which I decided at this point in my life, that wasn't exactly what I wanted to do with my career. So about a year and a half ago now, I started my own fractional CFO firm. And what I really focus in on is the family-owned business in the $5 to $50 million sales range. I don't really go much below 5. I can go above 50, but when you get critical mass, sometimes you can afford your own resources. And really, my focus is to help the family-owned businesses with their eventual transitions and or exit plans. I'm sure your audience and you guys are all business owners and deal with that. Unfortunately, one of the most staggering statistics to me is that nearly half of all of the family-owned businesses are ending up in bankruptcy within 2 years of the death of the founder or the current owner. And why is that? It's just simply a lack of planning and not trying to get involved in figuring out what we need to do. And that's what my business is based on, and that's what I really like doing. So could talk a lot more about it. But the interesting part of my business is I'm not just what I call a fractional CFO. I'm really a business advisor. And if I tell you on a given week, I don't even know what's going to come up this week. All the interesting things I get involved in to help my clients to grow their business or deal with issues. It's just really exciting and fun. So
It seems lots of times with that there's generational businesses like that there isn't that legacy planning because everybody always thinks, oh, we have more time, we have more time. And a lot of the knowledge isn't passed from, one person to the next. And the person who's kind of handing it up. And again, it was a trained response because grandpa had it and he didn't pass it to dad or tell dad any of the secrets until, he was, truly done and so forth. I've seen that, quite a bit of times. What are some of the other challenges that you're seeing with these family-owned businesses?
yeah, so the two, you hit on one of them, but the two major issues that I'm seeing with these family-owned businesses, and it's sort of okay if you're transitioning within a family, but if you're going to do an external sale, that's where it gets really challenging, is a lot of these businesses start out as a product, right? So they're not really a business or a full line of products. They sell a product and then they sort of start growing and they turn into a business. But what happens many, many times is they end up super concentrated in a small pool of customers, right? And what we call in this world is customer concentration, right? And that is extremely risky for an ongoing business. And I have two clients like this right now. We have 70% of our business with one client or one client group. If that client takes a downturn or goes out of business, you're typically in a real world of hurt. When you go to sell that business, you're also going to take a significant haircut from the investors. Any sophisticated investor, particularly the PE guys and the family office guys, are going to be like, "Whoa, this is very risky, and it's going to take us some significant work to get that customer concentration down." So they're going to have they're going to want a discount on that sale. The other thing, and you alluded to, is um, the lack of strong people around the owner, having a strong management team and a team who acts in an autonomous fashion, right? Typically, the people that are running these businesses are, run on a hub and spoke methodology. They haven't really grown as much as they would like to, and they haven't let other people take the reins and do things. So if if you're going to sell it, the owner becomes a key cog and is the one who has all the answers. Um, and when somebody's buying you, they want to have a team in place that can handle running the operation without having to run to a single owner. And that's sort of a danger, and that's really prevalent with, there's a real kind of strong divide. The people that are running businesses, and typically in the industrial space I'm in, it's older males, in their 60s and 70s who haven't made a plan. They run it hub and spoke. They can't imagine ever leaving the business. You get here all the time. I'm sure you hear it. I'm going to die at my desk. And they they want to be the spoon that stirs the drink and do everything, but they also say, "Hey, well, but I want to go to Florida for 4 months, but I'm still going to keep running this thing." And they take the foot off the accelerator, and you're destroying value. So it's really hard. Now, I have some really great clients that are sort of my age, mid 50s, and they have a little bit of a different perspective. It's that generational shift where they're saying, "Hey, I have a business here. I don't want to work till I'm 80. I don't want to work till I'm 70, probably. My kids are not probably interested in this. And we have to get this business in condition to sell it because you can't just snap your fingers and walk out and sell the business." I've never met a business owner who thought their business was worth less than was that they thought their business was worth less than what it was.
Right.
Typically, they are amazed that there's no real intrinsic value, or from an EBITDA and adjusted EBITDA perspective at a point in time, there's work that needs to be done on the business. So I'll come in and say, "Hey, we've got 3 years of work to do, 5 years of work to do, whatever it might be, to get this where we need to be. And then the fun and the challenges start. So those would be the two biggest things I'm seeing out there.
Yeah, because especially with the businesses that are below the 5 million, many times those business owners, they own a job, they don't own a business. And
Right.
and what you're talking about is really helping them transition from owning a job to owning a business and being able to, they need to be responsible enough to delegate a lot of the work that they're doing so they can take off those 4 months and stuff like that. Yes, they're still will have their hands in things and stuff like that, but it's not the day-to-day stuff.
Yeah. And that's hard to do. I mean, if
Yeah,
you're the person that started this or has been running it for 40 years, you know all this stuff, and it's a big change. The world has changed significantly. So
yeah. And it's always and also for those, they have those relationships with the clients or customers, and they're used to, hey, why is Mr. Smith calling me about his order? Why hasn't, type thing. And it's always hard to step out of it. I know that for me personally, I owned a job, and it was very hard for me to make that transition. And every once in a while, you still kind of fall back into it. Why, you have that favorite, customer or something like that that's reaching out to you, and it's like, okay, why, why am I getting a call from him about this type thing?
yeah, yeah.
And you're getting too involved with it. Um, the other thing, you talked about is like, hey, I'm going to have 3 to 5 years worth of work or whatever. Can you talk about that? Because I think a lot of people don't understand that, like you're saying, hey, you can't turn around and say, okay, I'm selling my business tomorrow, because you're not getting anywhere close to what the value of your business is. So can you talk about that some?
Yeah. I mean, the first thing that I see with a lot of my clients is that their accounting records aren't necessarily right off the bat up to snuff.
Mhm.
I've dealt with clients that you go in and they're dealing on a cash basis. So the first thing you do is you got to get the accounting reporting professionalized, and that takes a while. Do you need a more robust ERP, something simple? Do you need better accountants? Do you need outsourced bookkeepers? What do you need? Because you can't start singing off the song sheet until you got the right lyrics, right? So, a lot of clients, a lot of companies, they just run their transactions and turn their stuff over to their tax accountants at the end of the year and see what they've got over.
Yeah.
Not really a proactive way to look at it. But the reality is that the biggest challenge I see is that the businesses don't understand, as I alluded to earlier, the makeup of their customer base, right? And where they can get more business or more profitable. Very few of the businesses are doing any detailed margin analysis, right? Margin analysis of by your product types, by your customer types, by your geographies, whatever it might be. And I've been doing this a long time. And again, I've probably worked in 8 to 10 different businesses over the last 35 years. There's typically a business owner that's been in the business for a long time. He'll come in and if there's 10 things that they know, that they'll tell you, I know these 10 things about my business, they typically 8.5 of them are correct. And the 15% that aren't correct are the ones that it takes a lot of time to show with numbers that that's what's killing you. So that's the first thing. The other thing is, you've got to focus on, I go in and I say to all the business owners, I say two things. The first things I say to them is, what are your personal goals? And then how do you dovetail into that, what we want to do with this business? Now, sometimes people don't really know what their personal goals are, so you can work through that. Um, but do they want to put the time in and maximize the external value of the business, or are they okay with just limping along and trimming at the edges to make the external value worth as much as possible, right? Um, but before you even do that, the hardest thing is these business owners, and you alluded to it, they don't view their business as an asset. They view it as an avocation, a hobby, and their income stream. And you say to them, what are you going to use in retirement? Well, I'll just have this business. That's not really the way to look at it. So the first thing I say is you sectionalize the business, you realize, what are we making on this business? EBITDA? Is it $1 million? Is it zero? Is it whatever? What do we want to get to in a period of time, 3 to 5 years? How do you attack it? Are you up for some growth? Typically, these businesses I see, um, they're very, very risk averse and they don't have any debt whatsoever. They have zero debt and they have an unused credit line because businesses have been in pretty good shape. Debt has been um, learned or they've been trained to think debt is completely verboten, but debt isn't bad. Are you willing to use any debt to grow your business? The other challenge I see in many of these businesses is um, their sales efforts, right? Most of the businesses I see, they're doing virtually or they're doing no marketing and advertising. They're barely doing sales and business development. They're living off of referrals and repeat business. And that's how you end up with 70% customer concentration with a business that's, 10 to $20 million. So you've got to lay it out and say, what are the first thing is you got to say, where do you want to get to? Do we want to have, if we want to get to this and we want to have a $10 million external exit value on this, this is what we need to do to it. You start out and you say, okay, the typical, again, there's a lot of more science and art that goes into it than this, but typical multiple is going to be 5. If you want 10 million, you got to get to 2 million EBITDA. And then we have to market it. How are you going to get to $2 million EBITDA? Are you going to trim some costs? Are you going to become more efficient? You wouldn't believe all these businesses um, they're not doing any real purchasing activities or buying activities. They just get some new quotes in and they go and they buy from the last vendor. They're not negotiating terms. So there's a lot of operational building blocks that have to be done. While you're doing that, are you staying in line with your bank's covenants? Because even though you've got a credit line that's unused, the bank wants to make sure you're doing that. So, it's really a roadmap of where do you want to be in a period of time and what can we do in the business to make that happen? And it typically, a lot of it can be done. I say 3 years, things can be done, but I like to have 5 years to make it happen, right? If you get involved and in 3 years you have an opportunistic sale, the opportunity to sell or to do something, then that's what you got to do. The other really fun thing is and I have a client like this where they've already identified that they have an heir or a kid coming into the business, and there's a period of time where they're going to be training him, and they really have some significant growth aspirations and want to make acquisitions. That's a lot of fun. That's way more fun than the sale, right? Because you're continuing something and you're really plugging it along. So there's no one answer. It's just, the hardest part of all of it is, and I think this from the work you do, is getting the attention of the business owner and the desire to try and do something.
Yeah. I think something I want to make sure that we point out, you talked about, hey, the business owner, the financials or whatever is being done, given to their tax person to prepare a tax return. There is a huge difference between what you're doing versus what that CPA that prepares a tax return does, and want to make sure that people understand the person who prepares your tax return, no matter if they're a CPA, tax plan, or anything else, what you do for these business coming in is something totally different. And I'll say 99% of the time, the person who's preparing your taxes cannot do what you're doing.
Absolutely. Right. And that's one of the things I say is I passed the CPA exam in 1990, but I never worked in tax. I can work with tax experts and do a lot of tax strategy and works like that, but I don't prepare tax returns. That's not what I do.
Right.
I couldn't do what the CPA firms, and that's a big miss. A lot of business owners think that they're CPAs. Now they're good people. They're great. They just have a different job than what I have. So when you've been in the business for 30 years, 35 years, that's where you know the difference. So what we're trying to do is to get at information to run the business and to be looking at things in a forward-looking position rather than a historical background. I'm big on, I go into these businesses, they never have done a budget ever. Well, you need to do a budget. Why do I? Well, you got to have some guideposts. It's good for aspirational. It's good to kind of know how you're going to make some of your decisions. Forecasting, right? Forecasting, simple forecasting, cash forecasting, right? Every business I've ever been in, I go in whether the people that I worked for or not are demanding it. I do a 13-week cash flow. You need to know where you're going to stand. Need to know if you might need to borrow. So one of the greatest examples is when you're not doing any of that sophisticated, or I not even so sophisticated, just basic cash modeling and cash forecasting, when you want to go and make an acquisition or do a capital expenditure or do something different, the owner will typically just look and see do I have the cash in the bank? But just because you have the cash in the bank that day doesn't mean that's going to be available in 3 months or 6 months. So it's modeling out and it's really forecasting what's going to happen in your business. And it's just, to me and to guys like you and me, it's not really that much of rocket science or sophistication. But for people who haven't done it, you need to put those kind of routines and processes in place. And it doesn't take 6 weeks to start doing it, right? You hear all these guys come in and I'm going to have you whipped into shape and I'm going to find you savings in 6 weeks or 8 weeks or whatever. I'm like, those guys are not what you want. You want somebody who's going to tell you the truth, right? If I go and talk to somebody and they say, well, what can you save me in the first month? I go, I don't know if I can save you anything.
Right.
I may cost you money because you're going to have to pay me and I might find things that we want to do. It's the long-term perspective on the business. So, and that's a big gap because I call it the fractional CFO / fractional accounting service provider business, the market. It's very, very fragmented, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that are selling bookkeeping services, and we need those. There's a lot of people selling accounting services. There's people selling tax and audit and compilation services. And there's even people up to like the controller level, but they're all very different. And my wife and 3 daughters tell me to get over myself, but I get a little irritated when you don't need any designation to go out and say you're a fractional CFO. Like if you're an attorney, I can't go and tell everybody I'm an attorney, right? But in this world, so it's very fragmented. And business owners don't always know what offering they're getting because some of these CPAs, and I love CPAs, they're great referral partners, great people, but they want to swim upstream and start doing what they call consulting or controller work, but they can put the numbers together, but they don't know how to look at a business. They don't know how to design a management team. How do you come in and work in the organization? And I'm not the dumbest guy you ever met, but I'm also not the smartest guy you ever met. I've just had a lot of spins at it, doing it for a lot of time. So all these other tasks and things that people are doing, that's not what I do. I'm very clear on what I bring to the businesses. So.
Yeah, I think I have many times I have clients or potential clients that want that hybrid of, hey, I want to pay as little taxes as possible, but I want this. And I tried to explain to them, it's like, that business coaching and business development side of it is not something that your typical tax preparing, bookkeeping CPA is going to do for you, and don't expect it. Just like if I'm putting together a tax plan for a client, that's significantly different than doing bookkeeping and preparing a tax return. So I try to always explain there's big differences between all of this, and what you're doing is something certainly that I'm going to say the typical CPA is not going to do unless their business is doing what you're doing.
Right.
And I think people need to really understand that. Granted, you're still working with the CPA because it's like, hey, if we're going to sell the business in 5 years for whatever we think it's going to sell, okay, what can we do for capital gain strategies to help reduce it? But you're working not on just helping cut costs, but also raising revenue. where the typical CPA comes in because they don't know how to raise revenue. They're coming in, okay, where can we slash? And I think that's one of the reasons why you also don't see a whole lot of CPAs running businesses because of that fact. We're typically brought in to slash instead of grow. And I think that's a big difference.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of and there's a lot of differences. And I love working with those guys. Like for instance, I'm not an expert, there are other people that are calling themselves fractional CFOs, and this one makes me really upset. And they say, "Well, but I'm also a guy who can do your investments."
Yeah.
And I say, "No, that is not what I do. I have my own, I'm not an investments, but I have my own investment, my retirement plan, guys. I have all that stuff. That's a specialty. If you want to go talk to somebody who can do that, I can make that connection. I can be involved in the discussions. I'm
Right.
involved in all the discussions with the tax guys, the people who do the tax returns.
Yep.
I just met some business owners that I'm talking to, and they're in their early 60s, and they said, should we be making some sort of deferred tax contribution? And I said, well, you're not. How are you running a significant business? And I can make those contacts. I have an idea of ways to do it, but there's a lot of different ways to do it. But I'm not the expert on putting those programs together.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's really important to know your lane and just, I kind of say I just know a lot of stuff and I know who to talk to,
Yeah.
and I know how to get it done. You'd be amazed at how many people, and I'm sure you've seen this, that are running businesses that are in their 50s, 60s, and 70s, and they don't even have good estate plans, right? So, all right, I'm not going to put your estate plan together, but let's go and get um, a good estate planner to put together. And
Yeah.
it's amazing how, and there's good estate planners and there's poor estate planners. I don't know what your state you're in. I'm in Illinois, and Illinois, it's pretty. Our state exemption is a lot lower than the federal exemption. I know everything's in flux right now, and I say anybody who's got substantial assets needs to have. If you have a significant other or you're married, you need to have two trusts. And they go, well, my estate guy never told me that. I go, well, you're well over the limit of that, so we got to find you the right estate planning person that knows these basics. So
To me, one of the big keys with that is that how long ago did they have their, their estate plan put together? Because many things have changed, and that's where I try to tell people all the time, with the business owners, stuff like that, get a second opinion, on all of your stuff. I mean, you put your insurance out every couple of years to bid. Why aren't you doing that with, your accounting and tax services? And
yeah,
yes, you build that relationship with the person for things, but are they keeping up? I mean,
yep,
I run across a lot of doctors that have been with the same, CPA for, tax preparer for a long time. But that person is, the doctors are in their 70s and this person's been with them. So, they're quite a bit older
yep,
also. And are they keeping up with all of the tax law changes and different
yep.
stuff like that?
Yeah,
Uh,
I do that on my own. Like I literally, it's probably 10 years ago now. We had a surprise third kid 15 years ago now, but I hadn't redone my wills and trusts. And we went to a guy and got it done. And I wasn't completely thrilled with it. So a few years later, I went to somebody else, asked a lot of questions, and had him. I mean, the amount that you spend on it is
yeah,
not that much. So,
no, no. I think it's just one of those things like, just like somebody starts talking to you about, life insurance, and so many people, the brain just shuts down because, okay, we're talking about death. It's like, no, you're talking about, it could be an investment, it could be, to help your family, it could be to pay all of the taxes, it could be a lot of different things. And people just kind of shut down. And it's just like, look, you've worked hard to get what you got and to accumulate the wealth you got. Do you really want to give 50% of it to the government? And
I
if you
don't.
don't, you need to do this planning. And that's what with all of it. I think that for the listeners that are out there, if you think you're getting to the point where you want to start thinking about selling your business, you know, talk to Lowell, talk to someone like Lowell. that actually has done this multiple times, not, your CPA who's preparing your taxes to help you. Because again, the CPAs that are helping you with your taxes and tax planning, they're trying to reduce your taxes as much as possible. Where someone like Lowell is helping you grow that business, get your business in shape so it can be sold for the most amount of money possible. So it's important to be able to talk to a professional like him, to be able to do this. So please, if you're getting to that point, you need to start talking to somebody. And I'll tell you that your team of professionals that you're using to help you with all of this, they need to know probably 3 to 5 years out that you think you're going to get out of the business, so they can help you start getting things laid out in a proper manner to be able to reach your goals and be able to get as much as you can for the business. Well, we've talked about a lot of stuff. I could keep going because I like what you're doing. I like where you're helping people get, because so many people don't get this kind of advice and then they sell their business, or even worse, they just have to shut it down because they can't find somebody to buy for what they want.
The other, can I bring up one more thing?
Sure,
Really?
certainly,
The other
certainly.
key thing, and I tell this to business owners all the time, and I say, what happens if you get hit by a bus,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
And again, I say to people all the time, they go, well, I don't know.
Yeah.
They say, typically they say, my spouse, my wife will be okay. I say, well, that's because you have life insurance, right?
Right.
So they're going to be fine. But then all of a sudden something happens to you. They're going to be grieving you, and you have nobody to run this business. So the responsibility for this business and all these other stakeholders, primarily your employees you have in the business that you think you treat as family, they're going to have this, they're going to be grieving you, and they're going to have to deal with it. That's where they go to bankruptcy. I say to everybody, I go, do me a favor. You don't have to hire me. Don't hire me. But Monday morning, go and call your insurance guy and buy some key man. It's called key person insurance. Well, it'll be too, I go, it won't be too expensive. I've seen $500,000, you know, policies written for guys that are 70 or whatever. Maybe it'll be 20 grand a year, but it's worth it, right?
Yeah.
And that way you'll have some money that you can hire somebody to run the business for 2 years to get it where you need to be. So that's one of the other things, is that people are not thinking about they think they've got their family covered, but they really aren't. So that's one of the big things I
No,
point to
yeah,
everybody.
agree wholeheartedly. So what if I not asked you wish I had?
Um, I think we hit most of the important stuff. Um, the biggest thing that I think um, the business owners need to be looking at is um, the contingencies, right? The contingencies of what's going to happen to this. I think a lot of the business owners also, and this is kind of a weird thing to say, is we've touched on some of it. The business owners need to take a good look at themselves and say, what am I going to do when I retire? How am I going to handle again, we're all going to face that eventually. And I'm mid 50s. I'm thinking about it, but I know that I couldn't stop cold turkey and do nothing. But how do you do it in the right way? And a lot of people go to, I'm not a big, you know, business coach. Business coaches have a place and all that, but like there's a lot of help out there that say, okay, what are you going to do when you retire? But the other piece that somebody like me or somebody that comes in can do is say, hey, how do we do this logically that you can keep an involvement in it and still empower people to do things? Okay, you're going to be the person that owns the business. You have the final decision. And that's a balance of working with the people to bring the people in that can run the business, whether it's family members or other people. And that's one of the key things, is the business owners taking a good hard look at what they do and how they're going to um, ease out of the business. And there's ways to do it over time, right? And do it logically. And I don't think that's being looked at enough.
No, I agree with that. I think It's funny that you say that because lots of times I have discussions with my clients that are retiring and ask him, oh, what are you going to do? And it's like, oh, I got it covered. I get plenty of money, blah, blah, blah. It's like, no, no, no. I'm not talking about the money part. It's the other side of it. What are you physically going to start doing? Because you're used to getting up every morning and going into the office and doing that. And then suddenly now you're not going to do it. What's going to happen to your mental health, your physical health, because you're not getting up and so forth. So I think that is something important, especially as the business owner, because you've owned that business. That's been your identity for how long? And then now suddenly it's gone, and
Yep.
there's going to be a big void that you need to fill. So I think that,
Yeah.
again, going back to that, hey, let's get that 3 to 5 years of planning to get you to that point for
Yeah.
sure.
No, that's the key thing. So.
So, Lord, people like what they hear. They want to reach out to you, talk to you. How can they get to you?
Yeah, you just there's a lot several ways. The best way is to email me, and my email is Lowell Lowell at impactcfo.net. I have .net. So Lowell at impactcfo.net. I answer my own emails. You email me. Feel free to call me on my phone 847-212-4081, or go ahead and take a look at my website, which is the same. It's impactcfo.net. There's several links on there to set up some consultations or just 30-minute meet and greets, all kinds of stuff. I have some 13-week cash flow samples out there that I'm happy to do a test with you guys and do that, or just have a free consultation. So look forward to talking to anybody who might be interested.
Great. Well, really appreciate your time today.
Yeah.
I think our listeners got a lot out of this podcast today for sure.
This is great. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Sure. Great. Hey, this week our guest was Lowell Mora, and he is the president of Impact CFO, and I'll see you guys next week.